Hello, everybody. I hope you went through your stash and you're ready to start crafting with me. These are the 4 cards we're going to make today. They're very easy and very simple, and I started them from either square or rectangular shapes. I'll show you how I made them. Ahead of time, I just went and prepared some card bases, and this one can be used portrait or landscape orientation. And this one also can be used both orientations, but it's a gatefold. I cut some panels in shades of red, neutrals, and greens, but I'm gonna add a navy later to one of the cards that is not here. This is the kind of prep work that saves me some time. I'm gonna choose a green one to start on our first card. For this one, I'm going to use an embossing folder just to give it some texture and some interest to my background panel. I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine according to using the right sandwich. I have a video about that if you have a big shot. This is the result I got. I didn't use any water or anything. I'm just going to swipe a gold ink to give it some detail, to show off the detail a little bit. And I thought it wasn't shiny, sparkly enough, so I also brought in some perfect pearls, and mine were completely dry, but they did work. I just rubbed a little bit. The ink was still wet. It was pigment ink, right? The Alta New Gold one that I put on at first, and I just tapped it a little bit on those details, and you can see it way better now. Please forgive my voice today. I have a bit of a cold. That's why I didn't post it before. I recorded this video a few days ago, and I got a cold and my voice was pretty bad, but I really wanted to post it sooner rather than later. So this is the result, and here I'm just gonna cut some strips. Now on this video I'm not measuring anything, that's why I'm not gonna give you measurements, but I eyeballed the width that I wanted for the strips, and I got 2. I'm gonna add one of them horizontally, the other one vertically to the center of my panel to make it look like a wrapped gift. And if you have ribbon, you could use ribbon here instead. So you wouldn't need to use a die cut bow like I'm gonna do at the end. And it would be way easier if you actually had ribbon, but I didn't bring any. I think it might be in the stuff that I sent that it's gonna arrive at the end of the month. Make sure you use your ribbon if you have it. I bought these stamps a few days ago in a craft fair that I went to. These all say Merry Christmas in Portuguese, and I stamped and embossed them in gold ink. These are the dies that I use for my bows for this card and the next one. And now you're gonna see me playing around, fitzing and futzing with those sentiments and the position until I choose what I want. I actually really like the round one. I don't know why I didn't use that one instead, but it's okay. I'm just adding double-sided tape to the back of my panel because of the dimension. I want to make sure that it's adhered well. I'm gonna remove the backing of the adhesive and place it down. I'm using the corner of my scoring tool to place it correctly. This panel is actually bigger than my card, so I'm gonna trim it down, trim the excess. There's a little bit of adhesive coming out, so it was a bit tricky, but it worked okay. My scissors are not anti-stick, so it worked. And then I'm gonna just add again double-sided adhesive to the back of the bowl, because you could use liquid adhesive, but I find that you have to hold it down for a little bit until the glue dries, while the dry adhesive, you just put it down and it instantly grabs. The other reason is that I'm sticking it down to a mirrored cardstock, and I find that not all adhesive will stick your items well when you're doing it against glitter cardstock or mirrored cardstock. I know that my dry adhesive would work well here. Then I'm adding my sentiment. This is done. I didn't like that the bowl was centered, so I'm gonna shift it a little bit on the next one. We're on to the second card. This one I chose red to start, and I'm gonna make a plaid out of it. I'm finding the center vertically using my T ruler, but then I forgot to find the center horizontally later, but it works. You see here. And I find it's way easier to do this with a T ruler because I don't have to worry about the right angle. But if you want to do it diagonally, feel free to try. I'm just using the width of my ruler to space out the lines evenly and equally. And here's where I marked it wrong. Oh goodness. I don't know where my head is. But you'll see, you can't even really notice at the end. This is the card. It's exactly the same card that we did for the first one, except the I'm making my own background. This one is going to be a gatefold card. Here you can tell that I'm using the width to space out the lines. And these white lines, they're gonna give me the space that I need to do the plaid. This is an idea that I got from Christina Werner some years ago. She did it on an envelope, I believe. So I'm just using gray markers. I start with the lightest color. I believe I use W3, W5, and W7. So I'm starting with my W3. I spaced out these strips that I'm tracing with the marker kind of narrower than the original strips that I did with the ruler. And I'm doing every other one of those white lines. So I'm just tracing a little bit before and after the line. And then I'm doing it in one orientation. I'm going to turn it around 90 degrees and do it in the other orientation. Same thing, I start with the center one, I skip one of the white lines, and I do the next one. Here you see the I'm basically doing this orientation, the center one and the very corners, nothing else. And I skipped one to give it a little bit of light and dark, a little bit of contrast. But then I'm gonna come with my middle marker and I'm going to darken those areas that overlap the two orientations. So here it's going to be on the edges, it's going to be just a rectangle, but in the center, it's going to be a square. And I'm freehanding it. As I said, I'm not measuring anything and I'm just eyeballing. Go with the flow. I'm just darkening those areas where the two orientations overlap, like I said before. And then I'm going to get my darkest marker, the W7, I believe. And I'm just gonna go along, I'm gonna use the wider nib and go along those lines in between that I did nothing before. Here you could add a gold marker as well or a gold gel pen and it will look great, but I was happy with the amount of detail I had. Now I'm gonna use my gatefold card base. I'm gonna measure where I need to cut my panel. Just gonna mark it with a white gel pen on the back of the panel. I know it looks wild, but that's what I'm doing. And then I'm just gonna line up those white dots that I made along the cutting blade of my paper trimmer. And that should be perfect. Now all I need to do is glue it all down, assemble the card, put the parts together. I didn't use a sentiment to this one, where I can add it up later. And you could again change the position of your ball, change the position of the ribbon. I don't think it would be that easy for you to use real ribbon on this one. The first one it would work okay. This one, because it's a gatefold, it would be a bit tricky for you to get the ribbon along the edges of the opening, but you could give it a try. Maybe you have ribbon of different widths and that will work, I believe. You let me know if you do it. Let me know if you give it a try. But just gluing those golden strips along the edges. I'll cut one in half to add it to the center, add the bowl on top and call it done. It's very quick and easy. These first two ideas are very, very easy to make. And I hope you guys will craft along with me. If you haven't had many ideas or much inspiration lately, these are some quick and easy ones that you can mass produce and get loads of cards done before you have to send them. I think it's still good time most post office to send some stuff and get them in before Christmas. For this one, because it's a gatefold card, I'm gonna add the double-sided adhesive only to half of my bowl. It doesn't matter if it's left or right side, which half it is, but make sure that you add the adhesive only to one half of your bowl, or if you want to add another element here, you could do so as well. And then I'm gonna remove the backing, stick it down, give it a try, make sure that it works, that I didn't glue it by accident. It's just that if you add adhesive to both sides, you won't be able to open your card. So this one, we have to make sure that it's only half. The other thing that I need to say is I apologize for my head getting in the way during all the video, basically. But it's just that my setup now, it's not really great. You can see that my camera shakes almost every time I shake the table, and I haven't been able to find a better setup yet. I will work on it when I have a chance, but for now, this is the best I can do. I apologize. I know it's not as great as it was before. Here is just to show you that I could use one of those round sentiments as well, and it will look cool. Now our third and most invested card. This one, I'm gonna start with the navy pearly cardstock. It's just a scrap that I had in my stash. I'm cutting kind of a square and then a strip to make the lid. The square will be the box and the strip will be the lid. I didn't measure anything. Once again, I used the size that I had of my scrap as much as I could. I'm going to add a little bit of detail with stencil and white pigment ink. And I had this stencil laying around. I believe I showed it to you on my last video. I'll add a little bit more detail once it's dry. This one, once again, I felt like the pigment ink wasn't that bright, and I added some pigment pearls, some perfect pearls, sorry for that, later afterwards to make it a little bit more shiny. These ones were not as dry as the other one. The other one was, the whole thing was stuck together, was one block. This one was actually powder. Then I just cut some glitter, white glitter cardstock, 2 strips. I'm gonna glue them down across the center to make it as my ribbon. This card has an interactive feature, and I chose to hide a message behind this present, this gift that I'm making right now. But you could alter it and hide a gift card, for example, if you wanted to, and just use a message at the front instead. I had this idea from a video by Jennifer Maguire. Again, I think it's an older video, and you know, she's brilliant. So I'm just including this idea on my video because it also uses squares or rectangles, and it's very easy to make. You don't need any specific dies to recreate this card. You will need a craft knife to prepare the mechanism, but that's it. I am probably using all my bow dies from last video on this one to make all my cards, but I thought the ideas they include gifts as your main card element or your background could also be given with your Christmas gifts when the time comes. So I thought they were simple ideas, but they are very, very easy. And if you're going to give a gift for anyone else throughout the year, you could use the same ideas so they can also be used for birthday cards instead of Christmas. I am also sharing a bunch of ideas on how to add details to your backgrounds or to your elements. This one I'm using a gel pen right now. I did use the stencil and the perfect pearls earlier. I also used perfect pearls on the first one with pigment inks and embossing folder. And then the third one, we just made the whole background from scratch. So these are all ways to add more interest to your background. Here I'm adding foam. This is just fun foam that I'm gonna add to the back of my box. I'm gonna call it box from now on. My gift box, and I just kind of measured it. I'm gonna cut it, and again I am cutting it slightly smaller, but I'm not really measuring with a ruler. I am going to cut a bit of that center top element, and that's gonna allow for my hidden sentiment to move freely. You see it later. I'm gonna add it to the back, put some blocks, let it dry. This is the sentiment that I heat embossed. I am going to add this strip to the bottom. This strip will be my stopper that will make my my sentiment not come off completely from the card, from the cut that we're gonna open in a second. And I am using it way longer than I actually needed. And also, here I'm coordinating the color, but you didn't have to do that. You could use any color for the bottom strip, and no one will see that. That's gonna be hidden. I also added foam to the back of my lid, and here's the foam that I added to the back of the gift box. That strip is gonna come off from that space that I cut off behind the gift box. You see it in a minute. I promise it will make sense. Here I'm kind of centering it and measuring where I need that strip sentiment to come off from. Marked it with a pencil, and I'm gonna cut in between those two marks that I created. I don't know if you can see it well, but you see it in a minute. Sorry that my head gets in the way. There's no way to avoid it. I'm using a craft knife, and I'm gonna cut two lines. They are parallel lines, and there's just a little space in between them. And that's where my sentiment is gonna be hidden. That's where it's gonna come out of. I'll show you in a second, closer to the camera. Now you can probably start seeing it better. I just need to cut the sides of those two lines so I can remove the very thin strip that I cut with my craft knife. There you go. And we're gonna have a slit, and that slit is where we're gonna pass the sentiment through. That's gonna allow my sentiment to go up and down. As I said before, the stopper is way too long, so I'm gonna cut it down. I need to make sure that it is bigger than my slit so it won't come off, but I don't need as big as it was before. This should be enough. Also, I do want it shorter than the sides of the card because I am going to add some adhesive to the sides and I need it to move freely. So here I just temporarily taped the front of that sentiment in place. I am adding glue only around the back of my background panel because I want my sentiment to move freely in the center. So if you add glue to the center, you're gonna prevent the mechanism from working freely. There is no dimension, I just use glue there. I have a little bit of dimension here on the back of my box, my gift box, and that's gonna allow for that strip also to move up and down without anything interfering with it. I'm just making sure that the top of my gift box covers that slit that we opened, and now the sentiment can move. I am going to glue the edge of that sentiment strip. That again is too long. I'm just going to trim down a little bit. No measurement, eyeballing the whole thing, just winging it. And I'm going to glue it to the back of my lid, the strip that I'm using as a lid. I also made this pull here tab that I'm going to add to the back of my bowl. And it's very funny for me looking at it now because one thing says, is it written in English? And the sentiment is written in Portuguese, but oh well, what can we do, right? The other sentiment, the pull here sentiment, is from Lawn Fawn sentiment stamp set. It's very useful for interactive cards. I bought it not long ago. I've always wanted to have one because my handwriting is not great, but you could just write on it and it will work great. As you can see here, the sentiment moves very well, it moves freely. I am just being extra careful because of the edges of the bow so they don't get stuck. Once again, you could have your sentiment at the front and hide a gift card on the inside, and that will look different. It will be a special surprise. This is the main idea. And on to our last card now. I started with this die set. There is for gifts, and you could just cut them with a paper trimmer because it's mainly squares or rectangles, but I wanted to use the other elements as well, the ribbons, the bows. So I used the die set, but I'm also die cutting a circle. And I'm just gonna arrange like these three here. I just cut them with a paper trimmer and I'm gonna add my own detail to them. The first two and the circle, they were using dies, but you can tell like you don't really need to use the dies. I'm just gonna arrange them in a triangle and make it look like it's a Christmas tree made out of presents, I guess. I guess that's my main idea. This one, I'm using the same glitter cardstock, the white glitter cardstock, adding glue, and I'm gonna stick down this strip. It's just a very thin strip, very narrow there I cut with my paper trimmer, and I'm gonna glue it down all along and make it a striped pattern. And it's very easy and quick to make. You can make it at home. As I said, you don't really need the dies if you add your own detail. I just started with different shades of golden cardstock. So I used glitter, I used different shades of gold. I also used mirror gold cardstock. So just to make them look a bit different. This way, when we glue them down beside each other, they won't look like one triangle. They will look like individual presents. I think that was the main idea. This one, I am adding a bit of glue and I'm gonna sprinkle some glitter, iridescent glitter. I'm gonna let it dry for a few minutes. As you might have noticed on most of the other gifts, I already added foam to the back. It's very thin, fun foam, and it's just to give me a little bit of dimension because I didn't want them to lay flat against the background. Now I'll show you how I added a bit of detail to my background. It's just a white, plain white background. I'm using this dotted stamp from Out and New. I believe I showed it on my last video. I've been using it a lot. And I'm just gonna stamp it all around. It's not perfect. It moved when I stamped the bottom because my panel is a bit longer than the stamp. But I'm gonna cover it with these thin strips. These are mirror gold cardstock, and I'm just gonna make sure that they are straight. I am sticking them down a little bit far from the edge, and I'm spacing all four of them out to make it look like a frame. And that's it. I'm gonna stick it down to my card base, glue my elements, my gifts around as a pyramid, kind of as a tree, right? A Christmas tree. I guess that's what my idea is. And I'm calling this one ready. Again, I didn't add a sentiment because I can do it later if I need to. But I could also save it and use it for a birthday card. So if I don't stick down the sentiment, I can use it for both occasions. I hope these ideas were useful to you. I hope that you create something inspired by them. And keep an eye out for my next video. I intend to use circles on my next one and see what we can come up with different circles, what kind of cards, holiday cards we can create using basic shapes. Please leave me a comment, consider subscribing if you haven't done so. And I love and appreciate you being here, and I love your feedback as well. Have a lovely weekend. See you soon. Bye.